Hello, everyone. Welcome to Introducing Chef Compliance. My name is Alan Baptista. I'm the Product Marketing Manager for Chef Compliance here at Chef. And I am pleased and honored to have our resident security and compliance expert with me, Galen. Introduce yourself, please.
Hey everybody, thanks Alan. My name again is Galen Emery. I am the lead compliance and security expert for Chef Software, here with Alan today to talk about Chef Compliance, our new compliance offering.
So there are opportunities for you to ask questions. There's a Q&A tab. Please post your questions there. So we'll be able to answer those either throughout the event or at the end. We'll have some time there. Feel free to place them as you come with those up, and then we'll screen those questions either throughout the webinar or at the end. And for the first question, yes, this session is being recorded, and we will be sharing the recording shortly thereafter, and possibly the slides. If you're nice and ask nicely, we'll definitely share those with you as well. Just kidding. So why don't we get started? And we'll actually do some demo later on. So for the more technically, I'm the marketing guy, so you're gonna get a marketing spiel in the beginning, but then Galen is my tech expert and he'll actually do a quick demo for it. So one thing that we've been recently talking about is the balance between speed and security. And even Gartner has validated this in a recent compliance as code piece, but it's a really delicate balance that we see organizations trying to make, because it's either counter typically, because as you're trying to increase the speed, the expected security outcome is that it's lowered. But in reality now we're seeing that with the Chef compliance, because we're doing a lot of the work in advance of setting up profiles and creating and doing 80% of the work that was needed, that actually helps you speed up your process. And what is the issue? The need for security and compliance, for that matter, should not be negotiable. Period. Full stop. Right? In many cases, that impedes the ability for organizations to deliver with speed because of many reasons, but some that we see more common are that the security reviews that are done are typically done at the end of a long delivery process, where the timeframes are really tight because that end date to deliver is immutable, and it's like you can't change it. So then it happens more slippage and delays, and it's either pushing the date out if it can, or you're just willing to release the solution with possibly pending problems. Another piece that we see the delays are with audits that take away the valuable productive time once it's in production. They have to work and new business innovations, having to concentrate on this manual process that is very time consuming and impedes the audit process. Really just boggles the whole thing down, right? It's very hard to keep that audit process streamlined and very efficient. And even when the liability, we see even when done appropriately, the current security and compliance efforts or processes provide this limited visibility and just very point in time and hinder collaboration, which in many cases can cause some undue risk to your environment. Here's some of the stats that we see that despite velocity gains by other teams in their adoption of the DevOps teams or InfoSec teams are still lagging behind. We see that 56% of breaches took months or longer to discover, and that since 2014, for more than 5 years, most exploits observed, 90% actually, are used in only nine known vulnerabilities. In a recent survey that we here at Chef completed with IDG, We see that most companies take 2 months actually to complete their compliance and security audits. And 73% of organizations still release vulnerabilities at least once a year. So some impactful stats. Any thoughts there, Galen?
Yeah, I think that it's not just an abstract problem, right? Today is July 29th. In the last 2 weeks, we had both Twitter and Garmin suffer large-scale issues as a result of potentially poor security, right? Garmin got hit by a very large ransomware attack that took down most of their systems, all their customer-facing systems for quite some period of time. And Twitter appears to be related to an internal tool that was accessed by hackers either through social engineering or through other mechanisms. But either way, right, this isn't an abstract problem of like, oh, okay, well, somebody could potentially exploit you with a vulnerability. This is happening to companies every day, every week. And the time from when a 0-day gets announced to when a 0-day gets weaponized is increasingly short, right? So we're really seeing that all of these things add up to the fact that that companies are getting breached faster and more programmatically than ever, are not catching those in time, and at the same time, their current security policy is still too slow to resolve audits and to resolve vulnerabilities. So like the way we're doing it today just doesn't work. It's not solving the problem. We got to figure out how to solve it today. And that's really where compliance as
Yeah,
code
and
comes in.
this whole work from home too doesn't help it either, right? You're just expanding your area of coverage and ability of entrance, right?
Yeah, the remote work thing is actually a really key component of one of the problems we've seen customers face, and we talked about this in a couple of panels we had last week, was your footprint, your network footprint, your security footprint grew dramatically. Now you are in the edge. You are in every single user's home, every single one of your employees' homes, rather than being sitting inside of your physically gated, physically accessed, office structure with, work equipment only, no outside devices, all that kind of stuff. And now you have this sprawl that you really have to rethink the problem of how do we manage it, because we don't own the edge anymore. We don't have that kind of control. So we really have to think about compliance as code. We're using that, seeing that with zero trust to really kind of build that structure as we go forward.
So we talk also about the traditional approach, and it's interesting that the process, usually the last mile, it's oh yes, we need to do a security check before it goes into production. And that's part of the problem, because it's not done consistently across the various stages of your software development lifecycle. And like I said, even though these checks are happening, we're seeing more and more organizations releasing problems into production. And the security process check, I guess, is truly, I mean, it's manual, it's very slow and time demanding. It relies on scanning tools that generate false positive and a lot of data that's hard to process through. We're catching problems too late in the cycle, and it just becomes it uneconomically feasible to fix. And we have a hard time managing those exemptions and those appropriately. So it's very hard to not have a continuous security, continuous compliance approach, especially when we're talking about audits. The assumption that when you're doing these audits is that compliance level is, once it's at a single level, it's maintained there. But in reality, what happens, you see the dips and valleys that happen because you're at compliant at time 0, but then as time progresses, that compliance actually reduces over time. And then once you do a compliance check again, it goes back and up. So you see these up and down factors as well. And a big factor of that is really the distinction, the different languages that organizations are using. So this balancing act between gets exacerbated by the fact that 3 different teams have 3 different views or tools that they're using to accomplish these tasks of securing the system. Compliance officers are likely to have a big binder full of regulations that need to be followed. They also, the security teams might have these scanning tools that spit out Excel spreadsheets, thousands, millions of lines that they need to make, of things that need to be validated. And then you have the ops or the dev and ops teams that are actually trying to fix the problem and having to convert all these different tools and different formats into something that is codified and repeatable, right? Any thoughts there, Galen?
Yeah, I think the key thing that we're looking for here is that, thinking about how security reviews happen today, and as we're going forward, trying to, consolidate on a language, really we're trying to consolidate on a source of truth. Which, compliance comes in with their binders and their PDFs and says, this is the source of truth. DevOps and operations teams are coming in saying, no, the system state is the source of truth, and security is coming in with their tools and scripts. And so what we have is a communication problem about not just the language, because I don't understand what yours looks like, but I also have a problem where we don't really know who has the actual truth for what the security policy is, right? To say, these are the things that the system's supposed to work with. And Alan, you mentioned the exception management process is really broken a lot in the organizations today, where an application team may have an exception, but that's not accurately handled in the security review until after the fact. Security says, hey, I have a finding, and then the application team gets to go say, no, security, we talked about this last month. I have an exception to that one. We don't need to go through that, right? And they go, oh, yeah, you're right. And then we go through the process again, right? So it's that kind of back and forth, that kind of rework, that kind of ambiguity that we're really trying to focus on, and really think is a key component of the problem of speed when we're talking about how do we handle audits and security.
And the way to solve that, I guess, is having these compliance translated into a common language, so that it's basically ultimately means that you need to codify this and have it as a single source of truth, where all three organizations have a human readable language in the solution. And that brings us to managing security and compliance through code. So essentially having that common language among the teams that really allow the codification of the security and compliance profiles, where the stakeholders in various teams can work together and directly on security and compliance issues. They need to understand what's being codified, obviously, but in order to be able to certify that compliance. And managing security and compliance as code is, we think, the only way that you're able to have your organization have that continuous compliance, because it can be done repeatedly, standardized, and automated too, which helps you your speed. So you're able to collaborate with a common language in a human readable code. You're able to scale beyond a single system in a consistent and repeatable manner. You're able to test shifting actually security left in that overall process that we talked about, from the end of the process to far left, sometimes even into development. And the ability, obviously, to continuously monitor the status once you're in production. And now with compliance, with Chef Compliance solution, you're able to actually remediate any drifts that you see in those security profiles very quickly and efficiently. Galen, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think you hit it all, but I really want to drive home the fact that this is the document that we all agree upon, that we all reference, right? So if we're coming in from a compliance side, you can see in the example on the right, we have a number of things in there that a compliance officer would care about. I care about the PCI controls. I care about HIPAA potentially. If I'm in the federal space, NIST is really important, right? I care about the reference for where this control comes from. Why is this a real thing, right? All of that just text, all that kind of metadata around the control, around the setting, is really important to give the context to compliance and security for why this exists. Particularly if our auditors, like we have external auditors who aren't particularly technical and really just following the rule book, well, I just need to show them why the rule book exists, right? And this is great. This is really helpful. Telnet is a great example. We all understand Telnet. We all recognize that Telnet shouldn't exist on a system. And then that's where the control says at the very bottom, describe package Telnet. It should not be installed, right? Everybody who can look at this can read that and understand what that control is looking for and how it's operating. And so that's the key thing about this language and this code, is that I have a single source of truth. I can create this as a document. I can version control it. I can validate it. I can make sure that it's signed off on by the authorities who make the decisions. And then I can run it anywhere I need to run this particular control. I don't need to have a human involved in the process. I can automate this process, and I can really get this all the way through the development life cycle. I can also get this all the way out into production, really make sure that at no point do I lose visibility into how my systems respond compared to the security policy. And I know that that's the security policy because I can validate that at any point in time. And This is what we see with our customers. This is really one of the key values of Chef Compliance and Chef Inspect as a language, is to say, this is the policy. If you pass the policy, you can continue on to the next step. If you don't pass the policy, then we have to go figure out how we're going to handle that. We're going to talk about a bit more waivers and exceptions in a little bit.
Very cool. So essentially, what we're saying, if it's through Chef Compliance, you're able to bridge that gap. You're introducing security into operations, truly becoming what we like to say the DevSecOps organization, and really bridging those elements together. Speaking of DevSecOps, Galen, I think this is a cool kind of unified language example that you like to walk through. Why don't you take us through this?
Yeah, I think this is one of the things that as we get to that policy document, that artifact, that we can really start thinking about the structure of how we ship things, right? Folks who work in containerized platforms and in kind of, all of that Docker, Kubernetes, all that world, you're going to understand this thing pretty cleanly, right? I create an artifact, I create a container, I ship that through the pipeline, I deploy it to my registry, and then my systems pull from that, or I build new systems off of that container, right? This is the structure of what we're trying to get to with a lot of our application teams, a lot of our structures, is to say, look, I'm going to create a version artifact that contains everything I care about. That's going to go through my pipeline, and out of the pipeline, it's going to come to the trusted artifact store. And the key thing about Chef, and so Chef Compliance has these two pieces, security and operations, right? So audit and remediate. But we also have an application layer as well. But each one of these things can be managed individually or collectively as part of this workload. From a security model perspective, and this is related to, I think, one of the questions that was asked, Ian asked about, said like confirming around unauthorized users and pieces. What we can do from a security model is we can make sure that the fleet of systems, if it's IaaS, if it's containers, if it's bare metal, if it's VMs, doesn't really matter what it is, but as they grab these artifacts, they grab them from the artifact store. They grab them over typically 443, and so what we can do is we can secure that connection as an outbound only connection into the artifact store. The artifact store is only updated via the pipeline. The pipeline is only updated via source code, via the artifact. So I can actually have full chain of custody of any change to my systems by really implementing GitOps, but as a DevSecOps function. And what this allows us to do is to change the security model pretty drastically when we're thinking about access control around authorized users and things. I can remove, and to be clear, many organizations take some time to get here, but I can remove human access from production entirely. Or I could very much limit it and say, hey, human access only happens in a break glass kind of emergency moment. All changes happen to the pipeline. And when I do this, I really simplify my security model. I really get to focus on the things that matter. I get to go focus more of my time on dealing with intrusion detection. I can deal more with I can reduce my log footprint because I don't have access logs or nearly as many access logs to deal with. I get a lot of benefits out of this model by saying, fleet grabs from the artifact store is pushed to from the pipeline is visible, and it's built by source code, and I can track and trace the whole thing all the way through. I get this full chain of custody of any change all the way through, not just for my security policy, but potentially for my applications and for my operations and my configuration management as well. So really any of those kinds of things can be managed through this. And this is the key component of where we see DevSecOps and compliance moving, is that I can, by building this trust, by having this trust model, I can really make sure that everything is the way it's supposed to be at any given point in time.
In this, we introduced Chef Compliance, which we love this wheel of never-ending story, because it really kind of exemplifies what we bring as value from a Chef Compliance offering, where Acquire allows you access to trusted content that has been based either on DISA STIGs or CIS benchmarks, and it is curated and certified by Chef, and it's aligned to industry benchmarks, those that I mentioned, for audit and remediation. With newly available remediation content, organizations can now ensure the remediation action align directly to their audit results. And we now, with Chef, now makes it easy to define compliance baselines and tune them to the organization's unique needs. Flexibility to allow compliance waiver capabilities allow these individual controls that, in order to avoid false positives or misconfigurations or needed adjusted corrections. You're able to detect, continuously monitor, and evaluate the compliance posture by detecting those deviations from the intended state at any point in the software development lifecycle. You remediate non-compliance through the remediation capabilities that address these individual controls that align with audit tests, with encoding those fixes that you provide to enable this continuous compliance. The remediation can be easily applied without requiring really strong coding skills. So it's something that we're bringing to the masses, right? And then the reporting capability allows you to maintain comprehensive, up-to-date visibility across this heterogeneous state, easily viewing differences between the desired baseline and the remediated states that you have, and obviously track those waiver status and to enable this fast and accurate audit at any time, almost ad hoc capabilities that are quickly auditable and presented in a agreed upon format, which would reduce that 2-month cycle that you require audits typically to days or even hours, right? Any thoughts there, Galen?
Yeah, I think you hit it really cleanly, but I think the couple things that we really want to focus on here is in the top right, that acquire side, the chain of custody, right? By getting the content from us that's certified by CIS and tested and built by Chef, you have a chain of custody and support for the core content itself. We translate the content from the SCAP XML that they publish, both CIS and DISA, and we translate it into InSpec under the hood, and that's what we give you as the content to go run. And then the other piece on this is the kind of the defining the baseline and configuring the waivers and the remediation side. We all know that nobody follows the recommendations to 100%, right? And so as a result, we need to make sure we have the flexibility to manage those exceptions properly. So one of the biggest things that I think that Chef Compliance does really well is give us a clean way to say, nope, this control does not apply to this set of systems. We want to make sure that we go ahead and run that appropriately. And so that's really the key things. And then from there, from the data we have of what is the state based on our audit, we can then make the remediation decisions to say, these are the things we're going to actually enforce in the system. And when we enforce them, they will stay enforced forever because we were going to run it continuously on those boxes.
And Chef Compliance basically comes in two flavors, right? There's audit, Chef Compliance Audit, which is designed for, I guess, the InfoSec and SecOps teams who wish to maintain that complete visibility over the compliance status of their estate. And it provides this extensive audit content based on, like we said, CIS benchmarks and DISA STIGs that can easily be tuned to meet any corporate specific needs as well. So it's not immutable. It's not locked down. You can actually create your own set of into enterprise standards based on those profiles that we give you out of the box. And then for the remediation side of things, it's really designed for the I&O team that can help close the loop between audit and remediation and ensure that the system is continuously compliant and within the enterprise. The new remediation functionality and trusted standards-based content comes in this easy to remediate issues, that are uncovered during audits without needing much code. So it's both solutions are based on the CIS and this content that is Chef curated and certified. The distinction there is the remediation really between one and the other. So that helps organization, and they're all based on our core existing products: Chef Inspect, Chef Automate, Habitat. So those are all based on existing customers. One question that I think is very common here, Galen, and I think it's probably advisable for us to address now is, if I'm an existing customer, what is different than what I have now if I have Chef Inspect and so on in place versus what I get with a Chef Compliance offering?
Yeah, so if you're an existing Chef Inspect and Chef Infra customer, right, you've been using it to solve operational problems for a while. Maybe you're using Inspect to test your chef cookbooks and validate that your systems are built the way you expect them to. Or maybe you're not even using Chef Infra at all. You're using Chef Inspect with a different configuration management tool, whatever the structure is. What you've had to do in the past is you've had to build pretty much all of the content yourself, right? There's been a few open source places out there for inspect content. We obviously have the supermarket, which is a library of chef cookbooks and chef content to solve particular problems. But nobody's really had a full CIS audit profile or full CIS remediation cookbook or remediation hardening to work with. And so that's the big thing that we're really focused on the compliance side here, to say, look, we recognize the tools are really valuable, they're really important, they do a lot of really good things, and you're going to use them in your organization to make things happen. But what we don't need to do is make you, every customer, build that content, right? Everybody's following CIS, everybody's following DISA, or one of the two at least. And so let's go ahead and give you 80% of the content. Let's give you as much as we can to get you there as we go forward. One of the questions that actually showed up in the chat is, what standards and frameworks do we support? And so CIS is obviously the main one we're focused on, DISA STIG for the federal side. And then along with that, there's the question of, do we focus on operating system only? Right now, the majority of our content is operating system focused, but we're expanding to application content as well. I think Postgres is on the near-term roadmap, as is like Nginx and Apache, if they're not already done. I haven't checked the team in the last couple of weeks to see what they've built out. But again, the view is, we know from CIS what the rules are for these particular application stacks or these operating systems. We can go ahead and build the translator and test that information for you, and then give you that content as part of the subscription to Chef Compliance. And that's really the key value of compliance, to say, I don't have to go spend a bunch of my engineers' time building this content. It's already built for me. All I have to do is turn particular things on or off in a toggle.
And by using this tool set and this approach, we believe that you're able to obtain this continuous compliance functionality, because you're able to move your compliance checks and security checks and validations throughout the entire process, and ultimately moving it earlier in the stage and expediting the features and the functions that you're able to check and quickly deliver the remediation there. So it really eliminates the rework that often happens in the old approach, really allowing everyone throughout the process to have the dev and QA capabilities all throughout the same functionality. Some of the use cases that we see used for auditing and security, where customers have focused on this continuous security assessments, and they're able to easily customize as new CVEs come around. Your audit for compliance, where customers have paired compliance checks with the CIS and DISA STIGs, or specific guidelines that they're trying to follow, and to maintain their compliance status of their systems. Or even testing of configurations, where another set of customers use it to verify their configuration management results, be it through Chef Infra or other tools as well. You're basically able to enhance the trust on their tools and allowing them, these companies, to be compliant, their static code analysis and user testing. So InfoStack is still perceived as an inhibitor to agility and speed. Really, where we're seeing is IT operation professionals, 81% say they believe that InfoSec slows them down, but we want to change that concept. We're really trying to make InfoSec truly a DevSecOps organization, be more efficient, where the balance between speed and security is no longer needed, because you are able to be secure at a very efficient manner. We have some case studies now, Galen. I think you have these great anecdotal stories. So why don't you go through these slides and just kind of give us a quick overview before you go into the demo.
Yeah, absolutely, Alan. So we're leading off with General Dynamics. One of my favorite customers, Brad Shelton's a friend of mine at this point. Really key, interesting use case here in the federal government. They're working in the DoD and intelligence community here, and what they need to do is get to the authority to operate process. If you're not familiar with that, it's basically the go live document that federal agencies use to stand up a new service. It's the process of their security review and system review to validate that the thing is secure enough to be able to go live and handle the workload it has. And so they had an 18-month cycle time on this process. It took them 18 months to get through these authority to operate documents. They happen every 3 years. You can see pretty quickly the level of effort required. They got this down to 2 months by moving inspec in compliance into the image pipeline of how they build their core systems. So what they're focused on there is giving all of their tenants a core disastig hardened image for all the operating systems that they operate with, and building their services on top of that. And so they have two basic structures. They have to build and manage that image pipeline. They also have to build and manage the core infrastructure services, things like Active Directory. I think Exchange is run through there. All that kind of stuff is managed by this particular team. And so by automating the process of hardening the system via the image and using that image to build up their core services, they reduce that cycle time from 18 months to 2 months.
The next case is Danske Bank.
Yeah, so Danske Bank is straightforward. This is using Chef Infra, again, on an image pipeline side. But before they started this process, they actually had no automatic image or system creation. So what they're doing is they're, basically when they need a new system, a user would come in, build up the system, do it manually, and then save it off and be like, yeah, the system's ready. So they use Chef Infra to solve the problems, and Chef Inspect and compliance on top of it to validate that the systems were configured the way they wanted to. And again, they basically removed humans from their image pipeline process. So reducing the time from days and weeks to minutes, and really a key operational efficiency gain.
And then lastly, there's Haventech, which is out of the UK, out of Australia.
Yeah, so Haventech actually is using this for their containerized solutions. So they're using it to manage their PCI compliance and their Docker environments. They automate the infrastructure provisioning, and they're using Inspec and Chef compliance against those Docker containers as part of the pipeline, as part of when they're running in production, to validate that the systems haven't drifted and they are following the security best practices for those particular operating systems.
Very cool. So do you want to take over for the demo, or?
I will happily take over for the demo. So yeah, real quick on the structure of this, it's going to be straightforward. We're just going to go and show you Chef compliance a little bit, and a little bit of the waiver side, and we can get into a little bit more Q&A, and kind of go back into the deck and continue on. So I'm going to share my screen. I should have, there we go. That's what we're looking for. All right, so what we have here is the compliance dashboard. If you're familiar with Chef Automate, this is gonna look pretty familiar to you because it really is the same dashboard. We're not reinventing the wheel for compliance here. And I have one system running a sample profile. It's pretty straightforward, but we're gonna go ahead and kind of dive through this real quick. I have in here 10 controls. This is just a demo. Don't wanna spend too much time waiting for CIS to run. But again, just if you're not familiar with this, I can look at a node. This node in particular is failing. It's running one profile with 10 controls with 7 failures. Pretty straightforward security best practice that doesn't come out of the box on CentOS systems is SSH protocol should be set to 2, right? So here's the result. It expected 2, and I got blank, which means it's not set anywhere in the SSH config file. I can come in here and look at the actual inspect source, right? This is, again, a CIS profile. So 5.2.4 is the CIS control identifier. We had this description. We have an impact score. This is a 0 to 1. 1 is critical. And we're saying, hey, the SSH config, the protocol should compare to 2, right? Really straightforward. Again, really highlighting the ease of use, the visibility of these things as we go through this process. And that's really the key thing we're focused on here, is making sure that both the results and the source are visible and readable by everybody involved, so we can make sure that that everybody can use this document, use this language together. If I come over here on the right, you'll see actually all the scan history. This is a demo environment. This thing's set to scan really, really frequently. So I can see all the details as we kind of go through all this stuff here. And again, each one of these runs actually has the same number of failures, but I can look at any run through history. So I can see, again, thinking about chain of custody, thinking about understanding the integrity of a system, I can see if it drifted on me at any point in time where I wasn't particularly ready for it. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and turn on remediation for this particular system. And this is gonna be pretty straightforward. I have here a terminal where I'm SSH into it. I have some things in here, and I'm gonna go ahead and cat the config.yaml. I'm gonna go ahead and make this bigger for everybody. Give me 1 second here. I don't know what screens everybody's on. enhance. Here we go. So this is a config YAML. This is the file you're going to use to be able to modify these waivers on these particular pieces. So we can see we've got a couple different controls here that I might want to remediate. So 1.1.1, mount of FS, run true. So we're going to run all these true, but SSH access is limited. We're not going to turn that one on just yet. We're going to go say, hey, we don't want to run this thing. We're actually going to skip it. And the reason for that is John Snow says he doesn't want to. So he doesn't know anything, but in this case, we're going to go ahead and let him be correct here. And so these are the kinds of things that you put into the actual file. So to do this, I'm actually using Habitat under the hood to run this thing. And I'm just going to go ahead and unload the service and reload it with I've got a new package already built. And then what I need to do is this guy will go ahead and update in just about a minute or so. While he does that, while the system does that, one of the questions that came in was from Larry is how does this differ from the compliance profiles available in Automate? And so if I come here to the profile store in Automate, we're going to see there's 399 available. Eventually, there will be a singular profile store that is just all of the profiles mashed together. Right now, there are a few things here where this profile store doesn't have some of the latest content that's in the Chef Compliance stores. We're moving to that structure. The structure is the same. There's still just inspect profiles built via our translator tool. But so we will have this all together at some point in the future, Larry. But basically, if you have Automate, you have access to all of these, and you of course will have if you have compliance, you have the compliance profiles as well, including the remediation profiles. Chef Automate today, if you have like a Chef Inspect or Chef Automate license, does not have any remediation profiles. That's solely in the Chef Compliance remediation offering, not anywhere else at the moment in time. I can go through some of these profiles. Again, I just showed you the sample one, but let's go ahead and, you can see the detail in this. There's probably a couple hundred controls all told in this particular profile, and like ensuring DNS server should not be enabled. Again, really focused on this is all human readable. Anybody who's familiar with, or even unfamiliar with Inspect can look at this and go, yep, I understand what this thing looks like. All right. Did I kill enough time? I did kill enough time. Perfect. So my compliance has already run, my remediation has run, and I now have a compliant system. If I come back and I look at this particular system, I'm going to see that I've got this system. See here, let's go. I want node, not profile. This node has 10 controls, they're 9 pass, and I have 1 waived control. If I come in here, I can see that this was no opt, it was skipped due to the waiver condition. I don't want to disable SSH access at this time, written by John Snow. So again, we're really focused on this is the security document, this is the justification, this is the detail that we have to say, this is the state the system's supposed to be in, these are the controls we're supposed to apply, no more, no less. All right. I think that pretty much concludes the demo. That's one of the things I wanted to showcase is that this thing takes very, very short amounts of time to actually do its job on the system. We're really focused on that speed of delivery, the speed of remediation, the speed of audit to really make this thing happen. With that, I'm going to stop sharing and hand it back to Alan for any more slides.
All right, here we go, sharing the screen. So yeah, so reviewing, I think you showed this in terms of the human free zone and how it's quickly done without much. There we go. You should see the screen now. There were some content questions. This is the current model that we have. Q1 and Q2 have been delivered so far, and beyond are the profiles that we're roadmapped to deliver going forward.
Yeah, like I said, you can see, if you go back to that real quick, we can see that we are expanding to that application side of the house. We've got most of the major operating systems complete. So really focus on that. We haven't really talked about this, but we also have Amazon, GCP, and Azure support, including CIS certified profiles for all 3 of those clouds as well. So if you're running on any one or all of those clouds, we have certified content for them as well, best practices.
Yeah, I think we were actually the first CIS partner to have all 3 major cloud providers certified. So we're always proud of that.
It's always great to be number one.
right? Just to review this, this is kind of the circle of life that we talk about in terms of the chef compliance with acquire, define, detect, remediate, and report, and we start over again, right? And then here are some of the next steps that you can visit the product page. You can learn more about Chef on Learn Chef. There's actually a module for introducing Chef compliance. You can actually get a badge from Learn Chef and post it on your LinkedIn profile. It's a really cute exercise, and several have already obtained those badges. We have mentioned some of the stats on the DevSecOps research. That is one that is posted there. And then the Gartner report that you've seen some captions around in the presentation is available. If you want to see their compliance as code posture, you can download it from that link there. So let's get to some of the questions now, Galen. How do we, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Which question?
I said, do we need separate licenses for Chef compliance?
Yeah, so Chef Compliance is a separate license from any Chef product you may have purchased before. This is a brand new offering. As I highlighted before, the remediation content in particular is brand new. There is some overlap between the audit profiles in Automate and the profiles we have in Chef Compliance. If you have questions around that and entitlements, please talk to your sales rep that you're working with already. They have a full understanding of how to get you access to things and what you're licensed for, what you're not licensed for. But to call out specifically, remediation content is net new. There is a new license associated with that. There's a new piece for it. And the pricing model is per target or per system we're managing is the basic structure. I see that was a question in here as well along that lines.
Okay.
Along the content, I see another question around Mac OS, right? So is are more Mac OS versions planned in the future? Some Mac OS compliance profiles, but a few versions old now at this point. I'd have to double check the content store of the compliance offering specifically to make sure that we have the newest ones in there, but I think we have a couple in there already. We do have that on the roadmap. Apple did just make some changes in terms of how systems can be managed through MDMs and things. We're actively working with Apple and partners to resolve any issues we have with that. And once we get that resolved, we'll have a better idea of timing for updated versions of Mac OS pieces.
Yeah, I think they're actually working on 10.14 and 10.15 right now. And what you're mentioning is Big Sur, which comes in at 11. They're going to actually finally change into a major release number on the Mac OS. So yes, we are diligently working on those on that front as well. What makes Chef Compliance better than any competing products that do the same thing? Or do they do the same thing, right?
Yeah, so I think the first question is, does anybody do this the same way or the same thing? And we haven't really seen anything that does it quite like we do, or quite all of it. A lot of the compliance and security products that exist are audit only, right? They're going to raise a trouble ticket, put it into ServiceNow, put it into Zendesk, put it somewhere for you to go resolve as an operations team, and then you have to go resolve it some way. Or they're integrating with somebody else's solution. So you're talking to a different configuration management provider. Now you have two providers to deal with, and you need to match the content between the two of them. And the same is true with the configuration management side. Most of those tools don't have their own scanning, their own ability to audit a system. They rely upon somebody else's data to then go tell you how to remediate it. So first off, we're a one-stop shop. You show up, you have compliance, you have the ability to go scan your systems for state, go modify the waivers to specify the explicit state you want the system to be in, and go apply that state against your system or systems. And that's the other piece too, is that the waiver flexibility and the ability to manage this all as code is a key differentiator between us and any other product in the market today. Because what we really want to focus on is that DevSecOps. We really want to focus on shifting this into your pipelines, making sure that before we even get anywhere near production, we have a clear understanding of, is the system compliant to the rules, yes or no? And if it is, we can talk about things like removing security review from the process, or at least limiting what we need to focus on in security review. We can really work on automating those pipelines, really getting to that true continuous delivery, true continuous deployment type models.
And it can be used in conjunction with other configuration management tools, yes?
Absolutely. The audit content in Chef Inspect exists as a standalone, does not require anything from any other tools, any other places. So, so we can definitely run that by itself. I also say the remediation content doesn't rely really on Chef Infra under the hood either. We know when we're making the decision to audit a system, we know we're following CIS Red Hat 7. So a lot of the tree traversal that Chef Infra does is no longer necessary, and we just go straight to shell and make things happen that way.
Very cool. There's a couple of questions in the chat, but if you have any questions that you'd like, please post it on the Q&A tab. It's easier for us to monitor and answer those.
So we've got two kind of complex questions here that I see. So I'm gonna start with the one in the chat from Ian. This is the very start of the panel, and Ian, apologies we took so long to get to this. Ian asked a question really around challenges to security and compliance and negative test combinatorics. And what he means by that is the many negative tests to confirm that the many types of unauthorized users don't access sensitive data in the many ways that they could access such data, right? So there's a question around how do you make sure that people can't get to things they're not supposed to get to, particularly through transitive dependencies. If you're talking like AWS and IAM, that's a pretty serious, pretty complicated problem. We're not really focused on that today. We're really focused on making sure that an S3 bucket has the appropriate permissions set on it, that the VPCs are set up appropriately, that the security groups are set up correctly, that your IAM roles are set up the way you would want them to be set up. As we had that earlier talking about the DevSecOps model, that kind of human-free zone, we're really focused on saying, look, I want to reduce as much as possible the risk of humans having access to anything they're not supposed to have access to by automating as much as possible. So that's really our focus on that kind of negative test side, at least for today. It is an interesting problem to focus on those more complex transitive use cases of, okay, well, if I have access to create this machine can get this IAM role has these permissions, that's its own thing, that's its own kind of structure as we go through the pieces. The other complex question I see in here is from MS in the Q&A, asking around containers. So I'll read a bit of this question out. We want to have our images as small as possible, so no agents or additional software for security testing in the running container itself. Also, containers have different security compliancy settings and configurations. How does Chef test a container? What are the requirements? And how does Chef know what security compliance or inspect profiles are applicable to that container, including waiver and input files to make it even more complete? So first off, Chef Inspect can run against any target system you want it to run against. We can run against Docker, we can run over SSH, we can run over WinRM. So if we're talking about a Docker container, it's really simple to, from a build node, tell it to go target the container with a specific profile and give back the results. So inside of a container pipeline is where we first see Chef use to say, let's validate that the container has followed the CIS hardening for Docker. Like Alan showed, we actually have a Docker profile already built as part of the Chef compliance offering. So that's the basic profile we're going to use to work with. We also have a Kubernetes profile for Kubernetes clusters and all that kind of stuff. We also are going to want to go target that container potentially in production. Some customers don't do this. Some customers do this. It's really a question of how much do you trust that your containers don't drift. If your containers might drift or they're long running, then you're probably going to go want to run this again in production. And again, I can hit the Docker API on a remote target. I run against it and go from there. We also can go grab a container image from a registry and scan against that image without having to run against the running container. So we've got a lot of ways in which we can go hit that image or hit that container to validate that it's following the security policy. And again, typically because it's inside of your pipeline, you're going to define somewhere in there what the actual structure of that test is, what the profile is that you're going to run against it. And when you go to run it, you can go ahead and pass in config files and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully that answers that question. All right, MSS, another question of, I did not get the difference between Chef Automate and compliance. The difference in remediation and waivers. The Chef compliance offering is really, I would say, the content in question. So it's the CIS certified content for CIS audit and CIS remediation. As I said before, remediation content is not part of any existing Chef offering outside of Chef compliance. It is a net new offering from Chef software. And so that's the key thing there. The waivers functionality, that config YAML, the ability to implement waivers, that's actually just a Chef inspect functionality. You can do waivers today in your existing profiles. But again, the compliance offering really focused on today the content. We're utilizing Chef Automate's compliance dashboard as the reporting and visibility mechanism behind it. But really the compliance offering is about that CIS certified audit and remediation content. And then Lokesh asks, how do I push my compliance test reports into Chef Automate? When you're running Chef Inspect in any of the ways you can run it, either through Chef, through Habitat, or Inspect by itself, we have the ability to report to Automate through a reporter config. There's some great docs on that on docs.chef.io. I'll see if before this wraps up, if I can grab one specifically, but I may not have time before I have to run to my next meeting. So docs.chef.io, there's Inspect reporters, and one of those is Chef Automate. And that's the key structure of how you get Inspect report into the Automate dashboard. And the question just came in, will the recording be available? Absolutely, that's why we're recording it. So recording will be available. I'm not quite sure where or when.
It's on our
Alan?
website. It will be on our webinars page. The same link that you use to register will be the same link for on demand that you can then share with your teams and around your organization as well. So. I guess that is it. We'll give a couple, there we go. They're coming in now.
With a compliance only license, well, I see the note in the infrastructure tab in Automate. That will be coming soonish. I don't have a timeline from reporting from that team just yet. Because it's not using Chef Infra under the hood, it doesn't show up in the infrastructure tab to show you what it did. So the compliance remediation side is not showing up in infrastructure because what we're really focused on is the view of the compliance state and the compliance side, less focus on how we actually made that thing happen on the system.
Very cool. Any closing thoughts, Galen, in what is important? Okay, here, do you need a license to build your own compliance and remediation profiles?
No, if you're going to go build your own profiles today, you could go use Chef Inspect and Chef Infra, those licenses for those products, you know, the enterprise stack type stuff, and that works today for you to go build your own content. It's your content, you own it, you control it, right? If you come into support, we'll do our best to help you. But at the end of the day, it's your cookbooks, your policies, your profiles that you're running there if you're building your own content. One of the key things we're really trying to get across with the compliance offering is to say, look, you don't need to go build the baseline hardening content. It's pretty well established. We know what the best practices are. We can build and manage that for you and give it to you as an artifact. That's really what the compliance offer is about today. And then Jesse asks, will the use of the audit cookbook, so Jesse asks, will the use of the audit cookbook continue to be supported moving forward? Absolutely. So I ran Inspect via Habitat today, just because it's my preferred way to run it, particularly against systems that I don't have Chef Client Bootstrap to. But the audit cookbook is 100% a supported format, and we continue to make improvements to that process.
Very cool. So couple minutes for additional questions. Well, Galen, any closing thoughts in terms of, you've already presented this around and you've had some conversations, we've done analyst briefings. What is most impactful, do you think? What's the, elevator pitch for Chef Compliance?
I think there's a couple of things that are really key. First is that this is a really clean way to start getting full compliance as code, potentially even governance as code, to say, this is the policy we're going to follow for a PCI or a HIPAA or some other sort of external audit, right? And that's a really key component, is that's really going to allow us to reduce the cycle times on audit and compliance by also putting this into the pipeline. Where we're really seeing is a lot of improvements in security, hardening security status. We talked earlier about the two most recent security issues in production. But this idea of really focusing on utilizing things in DevOps like GitOps, really focusing on automation as the key component, allows us to both work directly with operations teams in their new way, but really, I think, allows us to bring security into the conversation in a way that's effective. We can say, hey, security, this is how you can bring your product, your artifact, your piece of the puzzle to the automation side in a clean and effective way that allows you to continue doing your job really effectively, but allows us to go a lot more faster as a business. And what we're finding with our customers in particular is that it's not a question of if or when there's a security issue, or if there's a security issue. It's a question of when. And we need to have rapid response. We need to be able to have resilient systems. We need to be able to remediate very, very quickly. I was just on a panel the other day where someone was talking about, dropping the SLA for 0-day remediation down to 2 weeks. 2 weeks is unacceptable. One of the last 0 days we saw, it was weaponized within 72 hours, right? And that's over the weekend. So you really need to make sure that your systems and your processes are effective at quickly pushing secure changes to your infrastructure so you can respond to today's threat landscape. That's one of the key things we're really trying to focus on is getting that structure built for our customers.
And only through automation and codifying those processes is where you're able to gain that efficiency, right?
Absolutely. Yep. Only through automation.
There's one last question that seems to be an automate question. I don't know if you want to take that or not.
Yeah, we can go ahead and take the last question here real quick. Marcos asks, in a workstation, is it possible to install Chef Automate? Chef Automate runs only on Linux systems. So if your workstation is Linux, or you want to spin it up as a VM on your Linux system, you absolutely could to play around with it and test it. For obviously any production deployments, Chef Automate should be a system somewhere more resilient than just your workstation, your laptop. But anyway, yeah, the Chef Automate is Linux RPM. You can grab it from a website from downloads.chef.io to grab Chef Automate.
Thank you, Galen, for your insight in your demo, and hopefully this was informative to those in attendance. The next steps there, you're welcome to access this. The recording will be available, made available in the coming days on our chef.io/webinars. If you continue to have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Galen or myself or any of our sales team or SAs. We will gladly go into more details. We even do demos specifically to your organization. So welcome Chef Compliance to the portfolio, and thank you once again, Galen, for helping me along the way here.
Yeah, Alan, and actually speaking of helping you along the way, this actually came to me out of band through the community Slack. If we're going to run a security webinar, you should probably update your Chrome. You got a little red arrow in the top right corner saying that you need to upgrade it. Yeah,
I know. I saw that a few minutes before the thing started, and I said, I don't know if I want to do this right now before the webinar starts. So I will start doing that and stop sharing right now. So thank you very much.
All right, there we go.
For that, there we go.
Thank you, John, for that call out so we can make my marketing people more secure. Definitely appreciate that. All right, folks, thank you all for your time. It's been a pleasure. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, and looking forward to seeing you on another one of these soon.